Hello and welcome. I'm Erin. I'm really excited about this video because it comes by request. Thank you to many of my international learners who have expressed wanting to know more about writing sentences with variety in English. And this goes for people in the US too. As we work so hard to be concise, we sometimes worry that we lose the flair and flavor and interest of our sentences. So in this video, you'll learn 3 ways to make your sentence interesting while still using a concise sentence structure. Okay, so before we get into it, quick reminder, whenever you want to be concise, the best way to do that is to make sure your sentence leads with who's doing something and what are they doing. We are, though, going to figure out how to make these sentences more interesting while making them still stay concise. You'll see these sentences at the end again, but notice how they're all in that who-what format. The artistic movement was met with resistance. My manager asked me to submit this file. We need the updates. Rates of pneumonia are rising. It's clear, it's concise, but you want to write with more interest, and I get it. So here come 3 ways to do that. Okay, for each of the 3 ways, we are going to do a business example and an academic example. So if you're writing for work or school, this can help you add variety to your clear and concise sentences. All right, our first business example, the training program now includes a communication class. And what I'm suggesting for sentence variety is to use a tone-setting introduction. Before that who, what, put in something that sets the tone and the mood, followed by a comma. That way your reader gets more information, but we're still being concise. I might say, to promote a friendly culture, the training program now includes a communication class. There, I'm using my introduction sequence to provide a reason that sets a tone. Oh, we're all about getting along together. I could also say, as requested by last year's cohort, this is what's happening. And then again, you see, all right, now I know the reason, now I know people like this, and I've been able to combine those 2 thoughts together to create an interesting sentence without ruining the clarity or concision. All right, on to an academic example. This legislation profoundly affected families in the area. It's clear, it's who, what this legislation affected. Let's see if we can add in a tone-setting intro that will make this more interesting and still help our reader. I might say, just like the 1982 Impact Act, this other legislation impacted families too. So now I'm setting historical context by using my tone-setting introduction. Another example, because it was economically regressive, here's what happened with this policy, right? It wasn't set up to help all families. Families got hurt. You can see I'm able to weave in a little more opinion and analysis with that approach. Let's look at another way to do it, the background flashback. You've got your sentence going, but then you're going to also bring in some history or some context with something that almost feels like a little momentary flashback. So if our sentence for the business example was their data showed growth, not the most interesting sentence, but clear with the who, what structure, how can I use this flashback idea? Their data, the first collected since 2015, showed growth. You can see what I used there is a long hyphen called an M dash. In many areas, you can just hold down Command-Shift hyphen, but you can look at your computer to see what it takes. This is basically acting like a parentheses, like a pause, and then you step back and say something additional, and it adds that rhythm and flow while still being concise. The key is that part that you're adding in the middle, it can't be too long, or your reader might forget how the beginning and end of the sentence even went together. So when you're going to interject, add that in the middle, keep it brief, keep that rhythm flowing. Here's my second example. Their data gathered internally showed growth. Now, I think that type of flashback, that type of contextual detail could even give me a different feeling about the data. So you can see how both of these also lend more information. Hey, we haven't collected this in a while, or yeah, we kind of did it ourselves, which does change the sentence a little. And we've added rhythm. So there's your business example. On that one, the background flashback. Academically, we could say something like the practice became more popular after the pandemic. Fine, another who, what, another clear sentence. What can I bring in to add flavor and interest? The practice, first developed in the late 80s, became more popular after the pandemic. Gives me some context, keeps my sentence rolling along though. Or the practice, now performed by analysts across India, became more popular during the pandemic. So that one, it's not a flashback into the past, but it's a flash into the context. So try this out. You're putting your context information or your background between those two M dashes. You are adding interest, and note, the writing that's in black is still your main sentence. The writing in pink is this extra part that you can add in for interest. And then strategy number 3, I'm calling it getting a little codependent. We're going to take two plain, clear, who, what sentences and combine them with the information of how they depend on each other, how they relate to one another. So in a way, we are adding more information by combining these sentences with information on how they depend on each other, how they relate. So her team hired 5 additional staff last month. They are still so busy they're hiring again. A couple of clear who, what sentences, but maybe as I join them, I can create some kind of a relationship about what information depends on what information. And that gives the reader more. So even though her team hired 5 additional staff last month, they're so busy they're hiring again. You can see how that even though allowed me to create that relationship between the concepts, adding interest and adding complexity too. Idea complexity though, right? I didn't make the sentence difficult to read or use difficult words, right? Lastly, her team is hiring again, despite hiring 5 additional people last month, right? So my word despite was the connector there. Let's look at an academic example. Same idea, right? We have 2 sentences. Maybe in this case, it's a slightly historic example. And then when we bring them together, we want that which depends on which feeling to come through in the writing. That's very interesting for a reader. So here we have the region saw less military presence in the 60s. At the same time, education levels rose. Well, these sound like they could relate, right? We could say as military presence reduced in the region, education rates were on the rise. Notice that makes it sound like there's a real causality. That sounds like a cause and effect. Reducing the military presence allowed education to thrive. That would be a great sentence if that's the case. If you're not sure, if it's more of a correlation, not a causation, you can still combine the two. While education levels were rising, military presence was falling. Here it sounds a little less like one caused the other, but I'm still able to convey that complex relationship that these were happening simultaneously. All right, so those are 3 ways to add variety. The next screen is going to take all those sentences from the beginning and give you a revision using one of these tricks. So stick around and I will be back with 3 more fun sentence variety structures very soon. Thanks for being here. Stick around and check out these example revisions.